Today we're going to talk about 2-1, the distributive property, and removing parentheses. The big idea, what we want you to get out is by applying the distributive property, you can rewrite the product A times the quantity B plus C as the sum AB plus AC. Notice all they did was take A times B, use the sign in the middle, and then take A times C. What you have to remember is that whatever number is out here, or whatever expression is out here, you have to do it to every single thing in your parentheses. That's very important to remember. It says, suppose an auditorium has 8 rows of seats with 10 seats to a row. The tickets for the first 3 rows cost more than the tickets for the other 5 rows. 2 ways to count the number of seats in the auditorium illustrate a useful pattern. One way is to treat all the seats alike. Multiply the number of seats in each row, 10, by the total number of rows, 5 plus 3, or what is 8. If you notice, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, there's 10 seats in each. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so 10 times the quantity, 5 plus 3. We don't know 5 plus 3 is 8. Times 10 is 80. The second way is to count the number of inexpensive seats and premium seats separately. Then add the results. So we could have took 10 times 5, because there's 5 inexpensive seat rows, plus 10 times 3, because there's 3 premium seat rows. 10 times 5 is 50, plus 10 times 3 is 30, which you also get 80. So there's 2 different ways you could look at that type of problem. This is an example of the basic property that involves both addition and multiplication. It is called the distributive property of multiplication over addition. Since the multiplication by 10 in 10 times the quantity 5 plus 3 is distributed to both terms in the parentheses. So here's the property that you need to know. Like I said, this C gets distributed to every single thing that's in the parentheses. The sign in the middle is plus, so the sign in the middle of this is also plus. Quiz yourself 1. Use the distributive property to expand. Okay? And I'm going to rewrite this. 6 times the quantity x plus 5. So I'm going to distribute the 6 to every single thing. So I have to take 6 times x. Well, 6 times x is 6x. Sign in the middle is plus. And then 6 times 5 is 30. And that is how you expand using the distributive property. You got to take the 6 times the first term and 6 times the second term. Okay? Let's look at example 1. Jason earns money by mowing lawns of 3 houses in his neighborhood each week. Since the lawns are of different sizes, he changes the neighbors' different prices, A, B, and C. He mows the second neighbor's lawn twice a week. So each week, Jason earns, he mows the first neighbor's once, second neighbor's twice, third neighbor's once. The neighbors pay monthly. So assuming that there are 4 weeks per year, Jason earns 4 times the quantity, A plus 2B plus C dollars each month. Use the distributive property to give an expression that is equivalent to 4 times the quantity, A plus 2B plus C. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute the 4 to every single term. So I got to take 4 times A, which is 4A. Sign in the middle is plus. I have to take 4 times 2B. Well, 4 times 2 is 8. And then times B becomes 8B. Sign in the middle is plus. 4 times 1c is 4c. So this expression is another way of writing this expression right up here. Because he's going to mow the neighbor's first lawn 4 times. He's going to mow the neighbor's second yard that gets mowed twice a week 8 times. And he's going to mow the other neighbor's yard 4 times as well. Okay, once each week for these two, twice a week for this neighbor. Explaining a multiplication shortcut. This is very important. I need you to write this down because you are going to be using it in your quiz and test. It's going to ask you this very simple question right here. Suppose a motel room costs $59 a day and a person will stay in that room for 8 days. To find the total cost, you can multiply 8 times 60 and then subtract 8 times 1. Calculate as if the price for each of the 8 days was $60. Then subtract $1 per day for 8 days. The distributed property explains why this works. 8 times 59 is saying the same thing as 8 times the quantity 60 minus 1. Why do we use 60? Well, 8 times 60 is a lot easier to do in our head than 8 times 59. Everybody agree with that? So we have to come up with two numbers when subtracting here that will come out to be 59. And we said 60 minus 1 is the same thing as 59. So, do we know 8 times 60? Yeah, 8 times 60 is 480. Minus 8 times 1. Do we know what 8 times 1 is? Sure, it's 8. Which is going to equal to $472. Please pay attention to that example. You are going to have one of those on your quiz. The distributive property of multiplication over subtraction. Same process. This is just over subtraction. Which means instead of having a positive sign here, you have a negative sign. You still have to take the C times the A and the C times the B. The only difference now is that you have a negative in the middle. Let's look at example 2. Expand. Now, if you look at this problem, I have a negative 11 here. I always take the negative when I multiply. Okay? So like I will say a negative 11 times 5. And you'll tell me a negative 11 times 5 equals a negative 55. Because a negative times a positive is a negative. Now, I have to take it times everything that's in here. Well, a negative 11 times, and this is a negative 6W. Notice how I just took this sign with it. A negative times a negative equals a positive. Yes, please don't forget that. So since a negative times a negative gives me a positive, 11 times 6W gives me 66W. And I just think this helps instead of having a two-sign deal. It's a lot easier when you write it this way or think of it this way. Helps you get your answer easier. Let's look at example 3. 2x times 5x. 2x times 5x. So I have to take 2 times 5 is 10. X times x, you should all be telling me, is x squared. Yes, because when you have exponents that are the same, or not exponents that are the same, when you have bases that are the same, you add their exponents. So in this case, 1 plus 1 was 2. Then I got to take 2x times a negative 3. So 2x times a negative 3. Positive times a negative gives me a negative. 2 times 3 is 6. And then I have to bring along my x. And that is expanding using the distributive property. Expanding a fraction. Because every division can be converted to multiplication, the distributive property can also be used to rewrite expressions involving division. Suppose the sum a plus b is to be divided by c. If you notice, they rewrote this, a plus b divided by c, is the same thing as saying 1 over c times the quantity a plus b. So what I think of this as is I have every single term all over the denominator. So I can rewrite this as a divided by c plus b divided by c. Now if there was a c up here plus c divided by c, I could also do that as well. Okay? But yes, all this is saying is that every single term up here can be written divided by c. Let's move on. Example 4 says, use the distributive property to write 36 plus 3x as a sum divided by 18 as a sum of two fractions. So I need a fraction plus a fraction. Yes, swear words for you guys. Fractions. You guys don't like them. Fraction plus a fraction. So if I remember from the last slide, is I can take every single term and divide it by the denominator, which is, in this case, 18. So I could just go ahead and write 18 here. Now, I have two terms, so I only am going to have two fractions. My first term is 36. My second term is 3x. Okay? Is this a sum of two fractions? Yes, it is. Could we dress this up a little bit? Yes, you can. Okay? This is fine as an answer, but what Mr. Johnson does is he notices that some things can divide out. Okay? And it might not leave us with fractions, but that's okay. Well, what's 36 divided by 18? You all are going to say is 2 plus 3 goes into 18 6 times. So 3 goes into 3 once, goes into 18 6 times. Notice this is not 6 over 1, it is 1/6. This was 36 divided by 18, gave me 2, because 18 goes into 36 twice. 18 doesn't go into 3, but it does reduce, so it leaves me with 1/6 x. And don't forget your x, people. Quiz yourself too. Multiple choice. For all x, 20 minus 8x divided by 4 equals which of the following? Well, let's do this. Same process. Okay, the only difference is I have a negative sign here. So I'm going to write 20 divided by 4 minus 8x divided by 4. If you look at this, how many times does 4 go into 20? Well, 4 goes into 20 5 times. Minus, how many times does 4 go into 8? Well, 4 goes into 8 twice. Leaves me with 2x. So my answer should be 5 minus 2x. And if you look down here, C would be my correct answer. That's all I have for you today. Please enjoy. We'll see you tomorrow.